Thanks for tuning in to this Provider Spotlight episode. I have so much fun when I get to catch up with old friends. And since this conversation happened to run a little bit long, I've decided to go ahead and just split it into two parts. This is the first half of the discussion, with the second half coming out next week. Enjoy. Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. I've known both of my guests today from pretty much the moment that I began training as an anesthesia student over a decade ago at Wake Forest University. And they have always been politically active. So I'm really excited to have them on so that I can catch up with them first off, and then also talk with them about what they've been up to for the nursing community. Sharon Pearce and Kimberly Gordon are both anesthesia titans in the state of North Carolina. Each has served as NCANA president, and Sharon served for many years on the national board in roles such as regional director, vice president, and president. In 2015, they joined forces with me to help Sharon run for the NC State House of Representatives. And while that ended up being unsuccessful for reasons that I'm sure we're going to get into, it sparked their interest in a much bigger movement. Both Sharon and Kimberly decided to attend school together at Yale University, where their doctoral project took the shape of a nurse candidate school, where nurses can learn how to run for public office. It's so cool to have you both on to catch up today, guys. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Trust me.
It is so fun to see you, Bobby.
It's so great to have you guys. It's been way too long, and so it's so great to catch up. But I like stories, and there's some stuff. Even though we've known each other for over a decade, I don't know that I really know what really drew each one of you to get involved in the politics of anesthesia. So I'll let you guys take it away from here.
Oh gosh, that's a long time ago for me, but I'll make this fairly brief. When I was NCANA president, we were having some difficulties with our lobbyist, so we did not continue her contract, and we had no lobbyist of record. So I registered as our lobbyist, knew nothing about the process, just started going to Raleigh a couple times a week, 2 days a week. And I had some excellent mentors that took me under their wing. Joanne Stevens, who ultimately became our lobbyist for the state, and Patrick Ballantyne, who was Senate Minority Leader at the time, taught me everything I know about politics. And that was my initial beginning. And I'm not even sure I know about Kimberly's.
So I was an accountant and went back to nursing school as a second degree nurse. So I was older. And I graduated from nursing school in 2001 and became very involved. I was involved in the Student Nurses Association, but then became very involved in my professional association, the North Carolina Nurses Association. And through that, realized how important advocacy was to nursing. And so I got very involved. I served on in NCNA. We had regions then. Districts instead of regions. And so I was district president, was very involved in the North Carolina Nurses Association, the American Nurses Association, and started advocating for nursing. I didn't realize, even in nursing school, the importance of the Nurse Practice Act. So I had some concept of that. But when I went back to nurse anesthesia education, that was when it became clear that not only is it important, it's crucial to our profession. And that I had a great, like Sharon talks about mentors. Sherry Owens was our assistant program director, and Sandy Marie Willett was our program director. So two absolute historical geniuses in North Carolina and at the national level. And Sherry Owens took an interest in my interest, and that was it. And then I was brought into the fold. I was mentored. Sharon and I met early on as student and instructor, but never really developed that relationship, had this tangential relationship, but never a close friendship, so to speak. But we were always professional colleagues and advocates for our profession.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like I said, I knew both of you. I started school in 2009. Kimberly, I followed you like as a not yet student for a day in the OR to have that experience that I could claim on, in my interview that, hey, yeah, I'm showing an interest here. And it was it was a great day. It was a fun day. And, but then Sharon, of course, being in the Wake Forest program, you were a constant person of influence in that program. So I've known you both for a very long time, but you mentioned like it's a tangential relationship. It was not something that was ever, really meted out before. And then Sharon, you decided to run for the NC House. And I don't know why you called me up or why you called, I mean, but you did. And it was a fantastic learning experience for all of us. But I'd love to go into what each of you guys learned from that experience as it kind of unfolded.
Well, let me back up for just a minute to say how we came from a tangential relationship.
Sure.
To one where we journeyed the same path. Whenever I declared for office, which was kind of a what's the word that I'd be looking for here? Challenge, yes. I was challenged and I declared. And in North Carolina, after you openly declare, you've got 10 days to organize.
Hint, she didn't mean to openly declare just then.
Yeah.
So after I declared, I'm like, what do I do now? I've got to get a committee together. So I knew that Kimberly was a political junkie as myself. And I called her and said, will you be my campaign manager? And she said, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Thank God it was absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know what I would have done at that particular point. And as we were building our team, you were an obvious choice to take care of the finances, the fundraising, those kinds of things. And then, of course, Deb Flaherty was our grassroots person. And I had a fantastic team. I still remember sitting in the office of the PR firm that you found, and we're talking about money. And you had put together a budget for us and told me that if I could raise $17,000, that we could probably do this. Mm-hmm. And then we go and meet with the PR firm, and they want more than that as a retainer. Yeah.
Learning experiences all around.
But after we told them what we were doing, they said they would do it for nothing for us. Mm-hmm. And so we did pay them some money. We didn't pay them what they
not what they initially asked for. We basically said, if that's what you're asking for, then we're a no-go.
We're out of here.
Yeah. We're not kind of the.
Yeah, we wound up raising about $67,000. Mm-hmm. And to us, that was something, considering we had put together a $17,000 budget and we thought we would be doing great at that, considering it never cost over $8,000 to win that seat.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was the big thing at the time was, it was all in the context of where we were at, because this was not a seat in Raleigh. This was not, a seat in Charlotte. This was in a rural county, in a rural town. And all of a sudden it blew up. We had such a professional looking campaign, but some other people kind of caught wind of what we were doing down there in Lexington. And yeah, that threw a kink in our plans for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well, they dumped $250,000 into against us.
Yeah.
So I tell my husband all the time, baby, do I look like I'm worth $250,000?
You're worth so much more. Don't shortchange yourself here. But yeah, so I mean that was the thing, is like the physician associations got wind that a nurse was running and could not take that. They did not want that. And that's where the importance really comes in of, having more nurses involved as advocates, because this was the second nurse to run for the House. You were the second, or were you the third? I can't remember exactly what there, or how many were in the House at the time.
Carla Cunningham and Gail were in.
Yeah.
I don't remember if Donna White was in yet.
I don't remember either.
But it wasn't the fact that Sharon...
She was running, because remember that event that we went to?
Yes, that's right. So she was running as well. Yeah, she was running as well. And that's the thing. It wasn't necessarily that it was a registered nurse. It was that it was a CRNA.
Well, yes.
That was the big issue, because we've had, Carla Cunningham had served as a registered nurse for years. And then Gail Adcock, APRN, nurse practitioner, and Donna White ended up winning. She was a registered nurse, public health registered nurse. But it was the CRNA piece that they were so very intimidated by. And I remember when that happened. I remember it because we had gone to a Republican meeting. We had come home and Sharon said, I just got a phone call from one of my friends about a push poll that was being run.
I remember
and
that.
It was then I want to say it was like January 17th or something like that. And it was then that we knew. We didn't think it was coming. I didn't see it coming before that. But I remember after that contacting you, and then the onslaught just happened.
Yeah.
And then when the first negative flyer from the other side came out, and I called Gail Adcock, and she said, what took them so long? I thought I was going to get away scot-free. And then whenever the first one come out, the second one come out, then they were coming out 3 a week. And
yeah. So, and a little bit of background for listeners here. So this is a rural North Carolina county. Sharon is running as a Republican in a primary where if the Republican wins, whichever Republican wins the primary is going to win the election. And so this was a primary fight. This was not a general election fight. So the ads that were put out against her were basically saying that she wasn't a true Republican because of X, Y, and Z that she had done, or had been a part of as part of the overall Association of Nurse Anesthetists. So the AANA supports all kinds of senators and representatives across the aisle. And so she was getting blamed for that now, for not being a true Republican. And you guys all know how political ads go. There's, very little truth in them, in these slanderous ads that come out. But of course, that doesn't stop people from believing them. And I vividly know, I remember a gentleman, I walked up, knocked on his door. I said, I'm here on behalf of, the Sharon Pearce campaign. And he said, I'm not voting for her. She's not a real Republican. And basically slammed the door in my face. And it's like, okay, then I guess, the fact that the other candidate has never been to your house before doesn't make any difference, and we're actually here to talk to you. But that's not the way politics works. They don't really care if you come to their home. It's a completely different ball game now. And it really, a lot of that true divisiveness started about 20 years ago, you could argue, but it's only gotten worse over the years. So, and this kind of segues into the next thing. well, first off, I'll let you finish your thought though, Sharon and Kimberly. What did you guys ultimately take away from that experience?
I think what became clear when Sharon called Gail, and Gail said, "What took them so long?" is that we truly had no idea what we were doing. we had no idea. We had, by the time she declared, she bought us all, if you recall, a campaign book that we were reading while we were trying to figure out how to run the campaign, right?
Yeah.
We really had no idea what
building the plane while flying it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we jumped off a cliff and had to build our wings on the way down.
Yeah.
But the fact that we both know how important it is to have nurses' voices at the table, and making that leap was pre-work for everything that's come since then. I mean, that was, knowing that you have no idea what the hell you're doing and figuring that out pretty quickly in the process, but doing it anyway. I mean, it allowed us, I remember speaking with you about, it's not going to change the campaign that we decided to run, that we're going to keep with the plan that we had. And we lost miserably, but we learned so much in the process.
Yes, we certainly did. And as we were door knocking, which speaking of, most of the experiences were very good.
They were.
And occasionally like your experience, but by and large, you go to a door and you say that you are a nurse anesthetist. Finally, we learned we just needed to say nurse, because then you would get into the conversation about what that is. So you look at a lot of rashes, you look in people's mouths, they want to show you this because the public trusts nurses. And as Kimberly and I were spending many hours together door knocking, she would be driving me around in one of Pearce's old trucks because we didn't want to drive around in, my Mercedes or her Audi.
Yeah.
And we learned that in a bad way too, because the average salary of my constituent was $26,000 a year. So I didn't need to be driving my Mercedes around, and I had to. Y'all know how I normally dress. Well, Kimberly's like, you can't dress like that no more. So we just learned all of this as we're going around.
Sharon bought her first pair of jeans.
Yes.
I forgot about that. I forgot all about that. Oh my gosh. Yes.
So as we are spending all of these hours together, we start thinking about the bigger question. Why don't more nurses run for office? Number one, how many are there? Well, there's not many. And why don't they run for office, and what could be done? And these questions are things that we discussed ad nauseum. And then when we lost, we wanted to do something going forward so that other people wouldn't have to learn the hard way, way that we learned.
Well, and I remember, when we first got done, there was discussion about like, oh, well, let's kind of take this on the road and do some presentations and things like that just didn't end up really happening. But that doesn't mean that the idea went away. We still had that idea of wanting to do something bigger, but eventually that turned into a decision for you guys to jointly go to Yale University for your doctorates and work on this more extensively. What was that process like, coming to that decision and then ultimately going through that doctoral program? Sharon's looking at Kimberly. Oh, they're both pointing at each other to go through this one. So this must be a fun one.
Well, I had been approached by an alumni at Yale and said that they were looking for people like me, whatever that means. But they were looking for people who were interested in policy and politics, because as we know, a lot of nurses do not have that interest. Kimberly was going to law school, and I had applied at Yale. And whenever I went through my interview, the lady that interviewed me was, I don't know, a soul sister, I guess you could say, someone who really understood the world of policy and politics. I get straight off of my interview. I don't even know if I'm getting admitted. I called Kimberly and I said, you have got to do this. You've got to do this with me. Now I think back, and wasn't that pretty presumptuous of myself to think that they were going to admit me?
Well, they did reach out to you. In all fairness, I mean, you did have a reason to think that they were interested. So, you know, I'll give you credit for that. Your history speaks for itself. So
Kimberly did apply, and we both got in because they were intrigued by us, because they had never seen anybody with our history. Number one, I was the third nurse anesthetist in the entire country to run for office. And as far as we know, Kimberly's the only nurse anesthetist to run a campaign. So we are an anomaly in so many ways. And stack on top of that, I'm a Republican from the South, and she is a Northern Democrat.
Yeah, which a lot of people may not have known before you said that.
No.
You know,
but, yeah, so they were absolutely intrigued by us.
Yeah. And I'm an independent. So, I mean, the trio of us.
Oh, wow. I don't even think I knew that.
Yeah, I'm an independent. I'm not Republican, Democrat, whatever. I just, you know, I kind of vote for the people. And, you know, it's just, we all have very different mindsets that we brought to the table, for sure. So I hope you enjoyed the first part of this wonderful conversation. Nursing remains the most trusted healthcare profession, and it's because we're used to getting things done for patients and families. We have a collaborative spirit that seems to be missing in politics right now. Perhaps we're the ones to help heal some of these wounds and, you know, get the country moving forward. In the meantime, that's going to do it for today. I've put Sharon and Kimberly's contact info in the show notes if you'd like to reach out. Make sure you tune in next week to hear more about what Sharon and Kimberly got into with their doctoral programs and how they're working hard on their candidate school. Take care of each other out there, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On-Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On-Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.